Now, you used the word cannibalizing earlier, or cannibalistic, and that's a word that I used during another piece I put out at the beginning of the year, in the way that the economy seems to be going. And then The Economist ironically put something out about the death zone a few months ago. But you seem to not think that the economy is that bad. It's not great, but it's not imminently on the verge of no return. So why? If the economy is showing signs of cannibalism, surely that's a systemic problem that is hard to reverse.
It is. It's just that these kind of systems can last a long time in decline. There's a long way down to go, one could say, and the speed is such. Look, there's no way of getting around the fact that the damage that is being done to the Russian economy is very severe, and more to the point, is going to take a long, long time again after the war to recover from. That said, there is a fair amount of resource sloshing around the system. Authoritarian regimes, after all, can divert resources to where matters. So precisely, they can essentially make ordinary people pay the price of fighting the war. There's obviously, and again, I don't want to go too much out of my depth on the economy, but although the problem is for the Russians that they can't actually borrow on international financial markets, nonetheless, their level of debt is, certainly by Western standards, pitifully low. I think it's about 20%, whereas the UK is over 100% of GDP. I think that one can say that it's kind of cannibalizing itself the way that you might say, as human beings, if you are putting too much effort and you're not eating enough, your body will start to devour itself in the desperate quest for energy to keep you going. Well, that is what's happening to the Russian economy, I would suggest. It's a rather sort of facile parallel, but there you go. But it starts from a position in which it has a lot of resource, and it has the capacity to kind of modulate and control the speed and the level of decline.
Okay. Now, I know you're not an economist, so I'm gonna frame the question from a way that ensures it's related to your focus. But when Putin is threatening to cut the pensions, or when there is this idea that public services are having to be severely cut in parts of the rural oblasts, when state salaries to try and get signing bonuses and all this are being pushed, and yet it seems very difficult to know where that money's going to come from. Surely there's a limited time frame that you can keep those sorts of policies in place before you have to, I don't know, cut elsewhere, or I don't know, restructure the whole thing in a significant way, which will start making people notice more.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, people are noticing. There's no way of getting around that fact. When 40% of your average person's budget is going on food, when you can't get a mortgage because the interest rates remain too high, or your existing mortgage is proving crippling, and there's high levels of foreclosures and the like. All of these factors, people of course are noticing. But again, there is this question of, well, what do you do about it? Protest is a very dangerous thing. This is still a thuggish police state, and also it's a time of war. I mean, I don't get the sense that the majority of Russians wanted this war in the first place and are particularly supportive of it. And whenever we see these opinion polls, they tend to show that, a substantial majority would rather negotiations and continued conflict. Now, negotiations, we have to treat that with caution, because it doesn't mean we should negotiate everything and pull out of the occupied territories. I think they more or less mean we should just basically end the war. I think that's what they mean by negotiations, and then talk about how we actually sort of resolve that. But the point is that at the same time, just as with the elite, actually doing something about it is a very dangerous thing. And do you accept that times are getting harder, but hope that it doesn't last for too long, and then you have a rebound? Remember, actually 2023 and 2024 saw people's quality of lives increase artificially because of high levels of defense spending, but nonetheless, people had more money in their pocket and were spending more. So it's not like they're yet at a point where they think it's been 10 years now and nothing is getting better. So there is still room for a little bit of optimism. And I think that's the point. That's what the Kremlin is gambling on. The Kremlin is gambling on the fact that this war will not go on forever.